What's happening, folks? Welcome back. Special day. It's Friday. Vildhjarta's new album, Der Skogen under Invitens Genre. Sorry, butchered, but it ain't my fault. Come on, lads. What in the name of fuck am I reading right there? Okay. Don't know what it means. Not gonna dig into it. I'll pronounce everything wrong. I'll probably misunderstand what the meaning is. Today we are solely here to listen to the music and take that in on a first listen, because Vildhjarta's stuff is so complex in and of itself that trying to add another layer of understanding in the lyrical context and the overall language and stuff is just, it's gonna lead to a 6-hour-long video, which I quite frankly don't have the time to do today. But I'm sure if this album goes down well, it will be something that, you know, I can dig into a little bit more. But the elephant in the room is I have not really enjoyed the single rollout with this album. Now, that can either mean two things. The way I'm teeing this up is that they've kind of undersold the entire album as a project with the singles, and maybe that's been an intentional play. Obviously, that sounds a bit far-fetched to say that a band would intentionally undersell an album and like intentionally put out songs that don't work that well or aren't the best songs, because that's kind of the point of singles, obviously, is to get people thinking about the band and then wanting more from the album. When the album eventually drops, people buy the record, yada yada yada, they stream it. So obviously that's probably a bit far-fetched and maybe a bit of cope from me, because obviously I want to love everything Vildhjarta put out, but I also have to remain honest, and I have not really enjoyed any of the singles. There's been moments, don't get me wrong, there's been some really fun moments. I think it was the riff in Sargasso. I think it was Sargasso. Not exactly sure which one. Maybe it was the Regnet track. The one with the silly riff. I think it was the last single that they put out. Not their best song by any stretch, but there was a riff moment in it that was just mind-boggling. It might have been Sargasso. But I guess that is the elephant in the room, is that I've not enjoyed everything that I've heard. Obviously, I've had a bit of an up and down, you know, experience with Vildhjarta, but that's completely fine. You know, people's music tastes change over time. People desire certain things as they, you know, get more familiar with the sound. They kind of hope that bands will lean, you know, particularly into a certain sound. With me, I feel like the Vildhjarta riffs and stuff that I've heard off of the singles have been less like groove orientated. There is moments, again, don't get me wrong, but it just feels like it's a lot more, it just feels very incoherent and it never really feels like it lands anywhere. It's just kind of noodly and chaotic for the sake of it. But again, I'm very much so of the opinion that if any band is capable of turning my opinions around, especially, and this is the killer, this is the main thing that I want to like nail home, is that in the context of an album, this stuff for me makes more sense. Vildhjarta's not really a single band for me. Like, they are an experience band. Like, you sit down and you kind of just allow your third eye to be opened and you fall into this world that they're trying to create. Perfect example is their prior two albums, the Mastadn and Mastadn under Vatten. Those albums are like kind of moments in time visually for me, if that makes sense. It's kind of like I can get transported to that world. Like, imagine the world that they've created in their artwork. I think they do such a good they do such a good job of like musically replicating the artwork. Or is it, I guess it makes more sense to do it the opposite way around, where it's the artwork imitates the music, which is a testament to, I guess, the artist as well who's doing that. But I'm hoping that this artwork is gonna like remind me of a new world with the music. I'm hoping that the music as, you know, an entire piece of work as an album kind of fits in with that album artwork, because I mean, that's some wacky shit. I mean, the Mastadn under Vatten and Mastadn artwork is kind of similar. This is a bit different. It's still in the same vein as what Vildhjarta have done before with their artwork. Like, it's chaotic, it's mental, like, look at it. But it's different. It doesn't have that same kind of like eerie, like haunted forest vibe. It's more of a like psychedelic complete fucking trip. So we will see, lads, but I am a little bit nervous. But at the same time, in saying that, I know from watching other people react to music and my own experiences in the past, because I've said all that, it can be very easy to kind of go into this album with that mindset of, oh, poor me, I've not enjoyed these singles in the past. and then you kind of just go in a bit of a slump and you end up just not enjoying the experience. So I do have to preface this because I know some people probably also notice that sometimes when people are reacting to music, it's like you can tell when they're going in with like a negative mindset, and then they're kind of, it's like confirmation bias when they hear something that they're not that into on first listen. Like initially they're like, oh, it's going to be the whole album, and then they just are in this negative mind space. So everything that I've just said, extract from my head, throw it away, fresh slate. This is, as far as I'm concerned, not even a Vildhjarta album. This is just a fresh band, and I'm interested to see what the hype is about. So without any further ado, 2025, Vildhjarta finally dropping an album. Very fitting to end May, because May has been outrageous. I haven't even checked out the new Rivers of Nile album yet, but that's a whole different video. Let's go. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce some of these names. They're too complicated. I don't know, but this one is this name. Let's start it off. 56 minutes long, so considerably shorter than their last album, which I think definitely serves the band well for how chaotic their music is. Yo, family. What's going on, lads? This video is sponsored by me. Lads, if you want to get full access to this entire video with no cuts, no pauses, patreon.com/DrewFortune is the place to be. Links are in the description. Any support is much appreciated. Otherwise, enjoy this highlight video. Can I pause? Okay, sorry. I know I said I wouldn't pause. I'm going to bring that back. I just need to make a few comments. So the intro, again, this is what I mean by everything I said in the intro. I want to see the world that they're trying to create. I want to visualize what it is. With Mestaden under Vatten, I, again, maybe aided by the album artwork. And I think that's an underrated, I guess, variable of, not variable is probably not the right word. It's an underrated element, maybe. There's probably a better word, but you know what I mean. An underrated element of album artworks is that they kind of maybe guide you a little bit sometimes into understanding the vibe that the band is trying to create musically. And I think Mestaden under Vatten is one of the best examples of that, because that like held my hand. Like anytime I think of the audio experience of that album, I imagine myself in this like mushroom trip forest that is quite spooky and dark, but it's kind of like that style of mushroom trip where it's only kind of spooky and dark if you allow it to be, if that makes sense. For anyone who's delved into the world of psychedelics and stuff, that can kind of be an experience that happens, I guess, where you can have this wonderful, beautiful experience, but if you allow yourself to kind of step into that darker side of the world, and if you have like it kind of just depends on your mindset, I suppose. If you allow yourself to kind of see things in a negative light, it can become very dark very quickly. And I think Mestaden under Vatten is a very, very like good example of that album, where the artwork itself kind of almost gives you the ideas in your head, and then you can run with it with the music. So what I'm trying to do with this, that's career ending, that is. Like there wasn't even like a pause there where I could just chop that out. Like that was after a very important sentence to build context. So it's either I start this whole thing again, or I just accept the L and accept that I'm 28 and I'm still having career ending, life altering voice cracks on camera for thousands of people to see. I think the latter is going to have to apply here. I think you're just all going to have to laugh at me and we're going to move on together. It happens, okay? Fuck. Anyways, I mean, everything I say after that is redundant anyway. Like, who's going to accept any opinion I have after like just squeaking like that? But the point I was trying to get to is that with this album, especially with the way that was building, I was trying to see the world like visually that I'm being brought into, because that's such a big part of the Vildhjarta experience. It's not just about the music, because it's so chaotic and incoherent at times to me that I have to have this like visual connection to it where I can go on this journey. And then the music just becomes kind of like a byproduct of that, and it's almost not even the main thing. It's more of like this fun visual experience that I have as well. Obviously it's guided by the audio, but it's not necessarily just about, oh my god, this is a sick riff, blah 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 blah, the way I'd kind of like critique other music. With Vildhjarta, I feel like I need to go in with a different mindset. So with this song, the first visuals I'm getting is obviously the intro to the song is quite chill, and it's leaving it open for interpretation is where I want to go with that. It feels like I don't really know, like it's not very obviously in this dark forest, it's not very obviously anywhere else, but I did get this vibe of a giant, like a massive giant maybe walking through, I haven't figured out the landscape yet, but just the way it was flowing, I got this vibe of a big giant, okay? Big steps, walking along, whether it be through a forest again, maybe we'll stay on the theme of forest with Vildhjarta, maybe it's like a big giant walking through a forest, crushing down the trees around them. And then the way the song progressed, towards the end, I kind of found myself, hear me out on this one, okay? Because obviously it's very psychedelic, and that's kind of where my mind is going with the artwork. That's kind of the initial impressions I'm getting, and from the singles that we've heard as well, it's like a very psychedelic, trippy feel. It's almost like incoherent, but done purposely. So my mind goes to, I'm feeling Crackdown, okay? Think Crackdown. There is a lot of people strung out on whatever drug, you name it. It's not necessarily psychedelics. We're talking like hard drugs here. Heroin, crazy fucking drugs. Okay, I know this is a crazy tangent I'm going on, but hear me out. This is just where my mind was going to. It started off in this kind of like, when the riffs and stuff, when it was getting a little bit dark with the crushing, like, then there's like a synth or something that comes in that feels like we kind of get transported into a spa. So to me, and it makes sense maybe at the start of an album, that maybe someone's just injected heroin in a crack house, and then all of a sudden that crack house, this grungy, like horrible, like just grimy, damp, moldy crack den that these people are in, turns into this beautiful spa because of the drugs that were involved. Again, look, I'm completely sober doing this. I've had a coffee this morning. I know my brain's going on a bit of a tangent here, but this is kind of the mindset that I like to listen to Vildhjarta in, if that makes sense. So a lot of yap there, but I hope that made sense. Where I'm at right now is visually, it started off with a big giant walking through a forest, and we somehow ended up in a crack den, and now we're in a spa because of all those beautiful, like, ooh, I don't know if it's a synth or if it's like a flute line or some kind of like instrument along those lines. It was a nice, like, soothing ooh, with all of the chaos around it. So it's kind of like this, you know, you're on the brink of something being really, really peaceful, but the chaotic nature of the riffs and the drums and how punishing the drums are kind of keep you grounded and reminder that this is just a trip. It's not actually real, you know. It's beautiful, but you're still in a crack den. Anyways, I've no idea if that made any sense, so apologies for that, but Oh, we got round 2 of the goosebumps. Oh my goodness. Round 3! Oh my god! I'm fucking levitating here. Oh, I'm full body chills right now. Fuck me. Best song I've heard from this new cycle by a fucking mile. And we're only a minute and a half in. 2 minutes. That was fucking sick, man. That tone. It sounds like robotic on them. Okay, bit of melody. I like it. Jesus. Jesus Christ. I mean, it's very hard to fully dissect these songs on one listen because there's so much going on. But the one thing that's in my mind is the middle section. I've no idea structurally where that lies within the song itself, but there was a moment where we kind of had a bit of atmosphere, but there was a something like that. There was some kind of riff being played or like just a load of notes. But they were like edging a little bit with the bends. That's the best way I can describe it. There was like, I think they were playing the same note, but then bending it and bending it and bending it to kind of almost imply that we're going to go somewhere, but then they would just go back. So it's this like really, really creative way of like kind of taking your expectations because we're following this like I think they were bending the note within all of that chaos that was surrounding it. That again is very clever in the sense that it kind of creates this unsettling feel to it, which is it's this contrast that I'm battling with. I'm like, am I in this fucking beautiful place or am I in this really dark place? And again, Vildhjarta did that so well, but that to me is the song of the record so far. The way they go about the song towards the end is kind of more into the quote unquote incoherent style of Vildhjarta that I'm not the biggest fan of. What I loved about that was one, the like classic Vildhjarta ambience. They're some of the best in the world at just creating this fucking beautiful cinematic atmosphere in this ambience. And then if they pair that with some of the iconic Vildhjarta riffs that are a little bit more groove orientated and just maybe a little bit more simplistic for my caveman brain, I just enjoy that. To me, I love the ambience, I love the atmosphere, I love the vibe and the feeling that I get from this band. But I do feel like my critiques with some of the like singles have been that it's kind of like less about the riffs and the atmosphere and more about like just notes like this. Like that's what it looks like. If you were to transcribe it or put it on tabs, it just looks like fucking numbers like everywhere. Like it's there is method to the madness, don't get me wrong, but you know, I think there is definitely method when you like look at it and you really like dissect it and you're okay, that makes sense. But like as an overall package musically, it does feel like it lacks that, you know, method sometimes. It just feels absolutely all over the place. So yeah, and that's me who's like trying to actively listen to it. Most people are not going to actively listen to it. So maybe that kind of suits them better because it's more of a vibe, but maybe they're not the band to like properly actively listen to. But then again, when you actively listen to it, there's so many fun things you notice, you know? And I'm sure there's so much shit that I didn't notice in that song. But again, first listens are tough with this band. But this is Sariaso, which I don't remember exactly the details of it, but I'm pretty sure this one was a rough song. I think this was like a real kind of like confirmation of what I'd been feeling for the previous singles, that I'm not really that into it. But let's go. Let's hear it again. Let's see it in the context of the album. Like, it's cool. That's a cool riff. It's cool, but I just don't think it sounds good. It sounds like a fucking forklift malfunctioning. This is very cool. It's like a pulsing fucking, like, I don't know, this could be anything. It's like a heartbeat or a pulse. Like, throbbing though. Rolling the oars sick. Ugh. Is this one of them? Now that's fucking meant. Like, that is a riff and a half. Where's the snare? Also, fucking God is trying to communicate with me here. What is his son? Oh my God. Okay, yeah, see, to me that like is very cool to listen to. Like, it's very cinematic, but musically it actually feels quite the opposite to me. Like, it doesn't feel like that is enjoyable to listen to whatsoever musically. Just that like wah wee wah wah bam bam wee wah. Like, again, it's more of a cinematic sound. Like, it sounds like buildings and fucking skyscrapers and shit falling down. But musically, just by itself, it doesn't make me want to return to it. Now, I will say that on second or third listen, obviously I had to edit the video for this, so I would have heard this song a few times. This is probably the best it sounded. It's still far from playlist, don't get me wrong. It's still a bit mental, but that riff in the middle section is one of the best riffs that we're going to hear this year, for certain. Like, that is one thing that Vildhjarta can do in fucking abundance, and I think it's why I hold them to such a high standard with the overall package, is because they're so capable of doing some of the most mental, fun, creative, unique, experimental, you know, new pathway paving stuff, like proper visionary stuff, that when I hear a lot of the other stuff, that's just kind of like, what the fuck is going on here? It's very hard to not be like a little bit more critical. So I try to just treat them as any other band, of course, like I said in the intro, but they are obviously a very influential band, a very, very influential band. And I want them to be at the cutting edge of the innovation and driving like Thal and this style forward. But I just feel for my own tastes, there's other bands that have kind of taken what they've done and made it a little bit more interesting. But that's completely fine. Again, there's very few bands that can pull off riffs like we just heard in the middle of Vildhjarta. And then like the ability to kind of like stop start it as well and like make you think that it's over. And then like so creative. But I just don't think that it holds enough weight by itself to make the song go playlist. It's like the only part of the song that I'm really into. The ending part is pretty cool. And again, it's very cinematic. But it's like, you know, I'm not collecting cinematic visuals for music, if that makes sense. I don't know what that means, but anyways, Vildhjarta, again, another single. This one came out a while ago, so I'm trying to remember. Also, this sun is crazy right now. Can I change that? Yeah, it'll be fine. It'll go away. It's Ireland. It'll be gone soon. Oh, thank God there's lyrics. Now I know what they're talking about. Oh, this is the fucking... The bird riff? Is that bird riff? Not sure why it's a bird riff, but... This is fucking sick. That part, I forgot how good that was. The, like, harmonic is so fucking terrifying. And this switch up here is crazy as well. It just crashes down. Okay, I'm going to pause this just for a moment because I want to discuss a particular section that I think is important to understand where I'm at with Vildhjarta's music. These singles are, the songs that were singles, to be honest, that hit a lot harder, again, in the context of the album. Because again, you kind of have like that time to settle into their sound, because it's a very jarring sound. Like a lot of the time, like when we're checking out the singles, it's like I'm listening to like some metalcore, deathcore, stuff that's maybe a little bit like more coherent, and even like a lot of prog music is still a lot more coherent than Vildhjarta, because yeah, it's like structurally prog is, you know, inherently a little bit all over the place. But with Vildhjarta, it's taking that like prog stuff and completely, how do I even describe it? It's like prog is like structurally a little bit all over the place, like, but it's like a flow that is like all over the place. But Vildhjarta, it's like almost every couple bars there's that chaos, you know. Every few bars it's like, okay, we're going here, notes. The one thing I want to touch on is, let me try and use this riff as an example of where I'm at with Vildhjarta's like newer stuff. Hold on. Okay, so this whole section here, everything about this is really cool. The atmosphere, the way it builds, the kind of, I think there's like a tremolo on the atmosphere as well. Somehow Buster obviously is someone that I guess is synonymous with using that tremolo to kind of make something just feel a little bit weird. I don't know. It's hard. It sounds great to me. I don't know how you would describe the feeling that it gives a certain section. Maybe it adds more tension to it. It's like like as something's rising, but it's also being broken up. It kind of adds this uncertainty to it still. Whereas with the riser, you're kind of like, okay, at the end of this riser, we're going to get a drop. Whereas it's like, like, are we going to drop into something else, or what's going to happen? It just kind of adds this weird uncertainty and just chaos, to be honest. It just adds to the chaos. But I feel like where I'm at with this upcoming section is that it feels like the band gets in their own way sometimes. For me, again, personal take. This is not an objective thing, and this is just where I'm at. I'm just trying to get my thoughts out when I'm listening to the band, and you guys can make of it what you will. Because we did have this conversation with Alex from Villanova, which kind of opened my eyes to it a little bit, which, like, because obviously he's an artist, and, you know, he is a vocalist in the band, and we, you know, he was giving us feedback on, like, you know, I guess us doing reaction videos. This is on the Metal Round, the podcast, by the way, if you're wondering what I'm yapping about, with Burb and Steve. But he was basically just giving us feedback on, like, you know, I guess the ways in which you can be critical of something, but not like a complete arsehole. And sometimes my thoughts unintentionally might come across as being a bit like I'm being a bit of a prick, but I don't want that to be the case. It's just sometimes I'm kind of like sitting here, kind of forget that sometimes I'm even recording, you know, sometimes I forget that people are going to watch this, even the artists themselves are going to watch this. So I never want it to come across as like me just being an ungrateful wanker who's just sitting here and like, ugh. But I guess if I'm listening to this off camera in my own time, this is how I would be listening to it, and this is what I would be thinking. Like the camera doesn't really make a difference. It's just that I'm kind of like actually talking. I'm just explaining my thoughts in my brain. But it feels like they kind of get in their own way sometimes because they're like on the right track with a lot of things. Again, for me, they can do what they want. It's completely up to them, and some people love this. But where I kind of have found that I think a lot of their stuff is that there's too many notes in particular like sections where it actually just loses the fun of the section that they've built so hard to get to. Like, let's just play this and I'll talk about it as we go. Okay, so here's how that's building. Like, it kind of feels like we're tumbling down a hill, but eventually we might like level out, and then it kind of just fucking slaps. That's why I think the riff in the middle of Sargasso hits so hard for me, and it got me doing the fucking, because it is chaotic and it's so unique, but it does find a home in some kind of like coherent groove that I can just say, oh, we are so throwing down right now. I don't know if that's just me, but I value groove quite a lot in metal music, a lot. And I feel like Vildhjarta have had some, because their riffs are inherently so creative, when there's also a lot of groove attached to that, it's like nothing I've ever heard before. There is so many moments in Mastad and Nirvana that have those moments where it's so creative and the atmosphere that they've built around it is so unique. And then they also have this stupid riff that drops in and it's so groovy that it's like the best thing I've ever heard in my life. The reason why I haven't really clicked with a lot of the singles is that they have these really unique moments, but it feels like they get in their own way sometimes with the groove. It's like they're just making it fucking janky because of all this like, instead of just kind of like maybe dumbing it down a little bit. And maybe that's the issue, is that they're just complete fucking mega minds and they're listening and creating music on a different stratosphere that I can even comprehend. But just for me, from my own experience, like listening to this again, I'm like, okay, this is kind of similar in the sense that it's a sick riff like we got in Sargasso, but it doesn't get in its way, or gets more in its own way than Sargasso did. Sargasso just kind of like found something that was sick, kind of played off of that and just kept it running. And it's like, oh yeah, and then they kind of switch it up maybe in the drum pattern and they add some space in there to make it like more impactful. But this is like on the same page creatively, but it's just like getting in its own way at times where I can't actually fully enjoy it for what it could be, in my opinion. That's where I'm at. So like, just listen to how it unfolds. It almost sounds like it's going to drop into something that's so fucking groovy, but it never really gets there. Like, maybe just... like, come on, get there. And then it just... like, it's almost just like, it feels like they're doing drum fills on a guitar. Like, that felt like a drum fill, but the guitar was doing the drum fill. Like, it's just... next part, you know? It's like, what just happened? Oh, they're stepping it. Oh, they're stepping it down. Oh! The creative bag I was talking about. Fuck me, man. It's like they have me in the palm of their hand and then they just go to this mental direction. That was so cool. I hope they find a way to bring that in. Man. Okay, hold on a minute. I'm trying not to pause every 2 seconds, but there's so much in this that we can talk about that it's impossible not to. It's like, I'm either here to listen to the fucking song, otherwise, like, I'm giving you my reaction, but also, you know, I know people are like, bro, stop pausing. It's like, just go and watch the fucking original album stream if you want, if that's what you're here for. But I have to pause, okay? I'm kind of like coping myself a little bit because I'm like, why do I keep pausing? But then I'm like, well, that's what I'm here for, isn't it? But also, there's just so much to talk about. Weird, like this band, what they do with their song structures and how much they change as they go. Like, again, the intro to that song was fucking insane. Breathtaking stuff. Like, that creativity, like, I wish they would kind of keep a theme with. I would love if they kept that as the main theme of the song. Now, this is just kind of maybe the very simple side of my brain that's speaking to me, where it's like, okay, here's a theme that we can latch on that sounds really, really cool and build around that. So the song kind of feels a little bit more memorable as a whole. Because to me now, I just have that like really memorable intro to the song, but then the rest of it kind of falls into what they've done loads of times before. We get that big dropout, the cool vocals come in. Obviously, it's still very different, like across the board with some of the sounds they're using and stuff compared to other songs. But it's just, it's kind of a blessing. It's kind of what makes Vildhjarta so unique, because they don't really ever stick around for too long. They just keep progressing the sound and it keeps changing, which makes it very hard for me to remember specific songs unless they just have a song that just is the most creative thing in the world, but also is an absolute ripper from start to finish. But I guess it's what will always keep these guys like they'll always have that really niche fan base, because some people just absolutely love this. So this definitely caters to those people, as opposed to like maybe catering to what I'm looking for a little bit more these days anyway, where I would just keep the creativity. I love the creativity. They're literally one of the most creative bands on fucking earth. And maybe just like give songs more of a theme. And I thought that was like such a perfect example, that song, track number 5, of like a theme where it just feels like we can stay in this vibe, this, but like progress the song around that and keep that song memorable. Because then for me, that kind of like sticks in my mind as that's that song with the cool harmonic thing that flows with the song. And they can still do all the chaotic riffs and stuff, but I feel like just keeping that theme makes it feel like one song as opposed to a combination of like 7 different songs. It makes it very hard to like stick that on a playlist and make it really memorable, because it's like, yeah, they have a great moment. It also makes it a lot harder for an individual to like a song fully because of how much it changes. Because if you have a really sick part at the start and then you add in like 6 or 7 different sections, I'm not saying it's 6 or 7, but like, you know, exaggerating slightly, like the song switches up like 3 or 4 times completely and it takes a complete U-turn, it's almost like you're lessening the chances that someone might actually enjoy the song from start to finish, because you're just giving people so many different looks that it might be like, okay, I like this part of the song, but then I hate this part, and then I like this part again. So, you know, it's kind of a weird one for me. But I just feel like they started that song so fucking cool, and then it just like all of that atmosphere they're building and that vibe they've created, they just cut it out and start like again almost. So it just feels like that's where the incoherence side of things comes in. But again, that's just a part of Vildhjarta's style. So it's not really something you can critique it based on, because that's just what they do. But for me and how my taste has evolved, I love that like dark ambience and the real like mystique to their music. But I just sometimes get a bit frustrated listening to it with the decisions that are made sometimes to just take this idea that we've had and then just kind of like abandon it and start again in the middle of a song. That's just me. Again, these are all just thoughts that are coming to my mind. This is not like, hey, you should do this band. Do whatever. I'm still going to be listening. Like, this is still a very enjoyable experience to me listening to this because it's so fucking unique. But musically, I wish sometimes it could go down a certain path. But that's, again, very selfishly just my thoughts. It's not like, hey, this is bad because you didn't do this. It's just, here's my thoughts. Take it or leave it. But I'll put them on playlist. The last two songs are going to go on playlist. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Ylva definitely hit a lot harder. How do you remember these parts? Jesus Christ, man. This is very not Vildhjarta. What was that? What the fuck? Jesus Christ! Man, I've come to the conclusion that Vildhjarta is cum metal for heroin addicts. That is just where I'm at with this. That was weirdly sexy at the end, but it's like two people who are strung out on heroin grinding on each other in like a moldy apartment. You know what I mean? That's the kind of sex appeal that this has. But I mean that in the most endearing way possible. That is not like a disrespectful thing to say. I mean, it might be disrespectful to like talk about people strung out on heroin like that, but they're having a good time, man. You know? What am I on about? But at the same time, I fully stand by it. Cum metal baddiecore for heroin addicts is what this album is. Anyone have any notes on that? I don't. Next song. I'm telling you, man. Cum metal for people who are strung out on hard drugs. Okay, so this was another single. Interesting placement of the singles. Back to back on both of them. And then 3 new songs after this. And I'm looking forward to hearing Den Spanska Kanzlan as well. Because that one was the first single that came out a long time ago. That was the like Spanish guitar one. This is the one they did the video for. This was the last single, I think. Then Sargasso was the one before that. 5 singles, yeah. Yeah, that same opinion when I heard that as a single, not for me. Although it's only 3.5 minutes longer, that one drags, to be honest. It just feels, again, it's like my main critique that I've had of other songs is that it's too fucking all over the place, man. Can I just say, before we go into this, I'm going to bring this back, before we get into this, if these 3 singles are really good, or even just solid songs like the ones we've heard here, like the non-singles, I'm actually going to be quite shocked by how much I've enjoyed this album, because I really didn't go into this with the highest of expectations based on the singles. Now, obviously, we'll be able to get some hindsight with when we finish the album as to whether or not the singles were the best choice. Now, again, who am I to choose singles? But just based on the non-singles that I've heard so far, I've enjoyed these. You know, I've liked this, I've liked this, I've liked this. They're non-singles. Ilva, I'm kind of putting in there for... I think Ilva was a decent single. Sargasso, I don't think was the best single choice. Definitely wasn't received very well amongst the... maybe people who are a little bit on the fence with their sound. I know a few lads hated it, thought it was very odd. I thought it was... Again, the riff saves it a lot for me. If they didn't have that sick riff in the middle of it, I think it's a complete clunk fest of a song. If these 3 songs, the next 3, the non-singles, are fucking sick and they have like really, really cool moments, I think this is a fucking solid album, which I did not even anticipate after 9 songs. I did not think we were going to be here, but let's not speak too soon. Holy fuck. This feels like a mirror all of a sudden. Okay. It's like fucking Minecraft background music with stall riffs on top of it. Not a bad song. Not enough for it to be playlist for me. Made me a little bit tired, I'm not gonna lie. I'm definitely nearing that fatigue portion, which is good that we're coming towards the end. And thank God this isn't like an hour 20 minutes long like the Mustadden album. I think this would be a different conversation. But they've still got time. They've still got time to really sell me on this album. I'm just going with whatever feels right now. I have no idea. Jesus. There's been moments where the screams and stuff have reminded me of the way in which Sleep Token approach their screams. It's kind of like a black metal-esque vibe to it in a certain way. I don't know if it's just because of the way it's mixed. Sounds pretty cool though. But instrumentally, I'm falling into a bit of a dark hole here. I've kind of lost all like cinematic visually of where I'm even at anymore. It's fucking cool again. I mean, that growling that they have going on in the background is sick. I think I'm nearing fatigue points. I think I'm almost there. Not quite. I'm just getting a little bit tired. It's kind of putting me in a bit of a trance right now. Which I guess is not necessarily a... You see, I completely get what they're going for with that, like, sound and stylistic choice of... It almost feels like you're standing on the... You reach the peak of a mountain. You're kind of... It's very grand. It's a very epic sound. You know? But... It feels a bit disjointed or something. Just with the like, epic feel to it, but then all this... I think we made it, but there's still like fucking ants crawling all over. I don't know, man. It's so hard to even fucking properly explain. That's the thing about this band. It's Giga Chad brain. Let's see, it makes sense. My head's a bit scrambled here. Okay, last non-single. Thought there was a fucking Linkin Park song for a minute. Fuck me sideways, man. And we're going into Den Spanska. Jesus Christ. Okay, so those last 3 songs didn't really do much for me, I'm not gonna lie. So that's kind of disappointing. But we'll see it out, and then we'll have a chat about the overall album. This song was very, very cool when it dropped. Still is, but kind of forgot about it. It was so long ago since it dropped. Like, if Sleep Token did this, all of the people who love this would say that that transition made no sense. That is a fact. Like, how did we get here? This is fucking sick, don't get me wrong. But the transition, like, just to this is so random, is the point I'm trying to make. It's such an interesting thing to listen to an outro track that was the first song that we ever heard from this new album cycle. You know? Because a lot of the time that album, that outro is such a big deal for people who love albums, you know? Who love that full album format. Because you expect the outro track to be like this big grandiose sign off of the album, and something that, like, you know, is the last taste that's left in your mouth for the next couple of years until they release another album. So to release that as a single, I feel like when you listen to the full album, it has less impact. Like, if those guitars and everything, now obviously I'm obviously coming from the perspective of someone who's listened to these singles beforehand, but I guess if you're picking up the album now, that's a sick outro. Like, the Spanish guitars and everything coming in, it makes sense, but it unfortunately doesn't have the same impact when you know they're coming and you've had the longest time to listen to it, because again, that was the first single, so that might have even come out at the end of 2023, I think. I don't know exactly, maybe the start of 2020. It's been like it's like a year and a half, I think. But the point is that it's an odd choice. I think the singles in general for this album were quite odd. I think Sargasso was a pretty divisive song for a lot of people. Yeah, there's so much thoughts I have on this album. I was really hoping they could kind of drive it home for the last 3 songs, but there was very little of any of those songs that really did much for me. Even then, Spanska Cancelan, yeah, the Spanish guitars and stuff are really, really nice towards the end, but I also just can't help but kind of mirror my thoughts that I've had on a lot of the themes that they've maybe hinted at for a couple of bars throughout this album, that if the whole song was based around the Spanish guitars, I think it would be such a... For me personally, it would just land so much better. Like, we have like 2 minutes or so of Spanish guitars, but they could easily use those Spanish guitars as like a main theme throughout. It doesn't have to be, you know, a consistent in the mix for the entire song, but just like even starting the song with those guitars, kind of teasing at it and then coming back to it at the end, I think would just have so much impact. And it's, again, this is just a personal preference, and I think it's more of a kind of meta point about the entire album, is that they have like themes that are so cool that they bring in throughout, but they kind of like keep them there for a minute or two and then it's just gone forever. There's nothing that kind of glues everything all together. It does feel quite random and incoherent for a lot of it, which was the kind of feeling that I had for a lot of the singles. But don't get me wrong, the singles do hit a little bit harder. Like, Ilva is on the playlist. These are all playlisted tracks, but I don't know how much I'm actually going to listen to them. It's just like, these are songs that I enjoyed, and I guess it's nice to have like a visual on screen to show kind of like where I'm at with the entire album. I actually don't even think then Spanska goes in playlists for me, just because the only part of the song I really actually enjoy, especially where it lands, if I'm, again, what I have written here is song by song, the incoherent feeling of, again, this isn't like an incoherent objectively, like it's not objectively incoherent. I'm sure there is like structure if you actually look at the actual layout of the songs, like bar by bar, but just listening and like the overall sonic feel to it is very, it just feels incoherent. It's one of the things that I've felt. I've seen a lot of people give the same feedback, where it's like that classic Vildhjarta sound. It's still in that same ballpark as Vildhjarta from the last album, but this to me feels a little bit more like, even the riffs are less coherent. It's less about like that pummeling groove and that like fun bouncy nature, which they had a lot of in their previous records. it feels more about this like, so it's kind of like a completely different vibe. I think they've kind of innovated their sound in a way, like overall, because they've kind of stepped away from some of those riffs. But I just don't know if the overall, like, it still feels very Vildhjarta to me, but I think because of how high they set the bar with the last album, this was always going to be quite tough, especially because they stayed quite loyal to the overall atmosphere and that like general feel of Vildhjarta. So this to me feels like a drastic step down. But again, that Mustad under Vatten album is like my first proper exposure to like a full-length Thal album, and that absolutely blew my mind. So naturally over time you get exposed more to this kind of stuff, and you hear bands that have maybe taken influence from Vildhjarta and transformed it into something that maybe is more applicable to my taste, which is definitely what's happened over the years. You know, I've heard so many different bands that have taken Thal and they've maybe incorporated it into metalcore, and it's just like a little bit more palatable. It's just a little bit more coherent, and it just makes a little bit more sense in the context. So on one hand, that's kind of like a critique for me of this album, is that they haven't really evolved with the time, in my opinion. But at the same time, that can be a critique based on my own personal preference. But I also respect that they are staying very loyal to the Vildhjarta sound, and they don't care about, like, I guess, mainstream success. That is clearly not what this album is about. This is like an album for the diehard Vildhjarta fans. It's not necessarily trying to bring in new fans or like naysayers of the band that previously didn't like the sound, because it's still very in that same ballpark as like chaotic all over the place, Thal inspired riffs, all this crazy atmosphere, very innovative. But you know, they're not trying to make radio hits, is what I'm trying to say. There's moments in there that could be on the radio, like the Spanish guitar part alone, isolated, is definitely something you could hear on the radio. But they're like Thal riffing over it. It's chaotic, it's heavy. What else have I got here? Yeah, song by song, it's palatable. It's doable. I can do the song by song. So it's a bit of a contradiction, because I think this whole thing feels better in album format. It makes more sense. The incoherent nature of all of the songs by themselves make more sense in the context of the album. But at the same time, from a fatigue standpoint, the singles are doable by themselves, and it's like, yeah, this is all a little bit all over the place, but it's kind of fine within like a 5 or 6 minute period. But over time, it compounds, and by track number 9, I was kind of checking out a little bit mentally. It's just a bit too all over the place for me these days. I can't really get into it. It doesn't have those moments of like pummeling groove that kind of wake me up again. It's just kind of becoming white noise to me after a while, where it's like, it just feels a little bit mad. They've do I want to, that's not really a point. I've kind of already touched on that about the innovative style. Like, I think they've maybe again stepped away from a particular aspect. Now I think is it Daniel that was previously a guitarist in the band? I don't know. People, I've seen rumblings, like, let's address the elephant in the room. I don't think he's involved in the project anymore. Well, he's not involved in the project anymore. I think is Daniel. I'm not too familiar with the lore, but I've seen a lot of people maybe messaging me and like talking about it on my Twitch, where Daniel, I believe, is not involved in the project anymore, and I think he was the original guitarist of Vildhjarta or something. I could be completely wrong on that, and I apologize if I am, but I think he was like the originator of Thal. And Cal's clearly a fucking wizard. The man's an absolute riff machine. But I don't know if maybe that's that Daniel influence that maybe was a little bit more groove orientated. And that's maybe what I'm missing from this album, where it's like there is moments where there's really sick riffs that are a little bit more straightforward. Maybe Cal's just too galaxy brain, like, and all of his riffs are just way over my head. But I just can't really find much to like excite me to go back to this album. Whereas like if we go back to Mustad under Vatten, back here, like this song, for example, like just like the same atmosphere, okay? This is probably a good little thing to talk about. So this is very in the same vein as what we've heard on the new album. This is not far removed from what, you know, Vildhjarta did on this, the album we just heard. This is very similar. It's the same vibe. You know, builds slowly. It's moody. It's atmospheric. I'm gonna skip it a bit. But let me just let it land. Like, need I explain that? That was like a good minute and a half of groove. Yeah, there was tricky moments in there where you're kind of like, oh, but they stay in that bag. And then, not to mention this, they have this little dropout. And this is... like, I think visually you can see there was very few moments in that entire album where I was actually just head banging along to a particular rhythm. And maybe what's happening is, I don't know, maybe technically on the new album, it feels like the drums for a lot of it are matching the guitars, and the guitars are so sporadic that it just becomes very clunky and kind of hard to figure out. Whereas this, the guitars are doing their own thing and the drums are just following a relatively, I don't know the exact time signature. I'm not anyway inclined in terms of that side of things. But I guess just from what I'm hearing, I'm able to follow that snare, and the guitars aren't like, it feels like does this make sense? I know this is probably just a bad example, or like maybe this is a very particular example that's kind of proving my point, or I guess just where I'm at with it. But I'm sure there's other songs in this album, I can't remember it off the top of my head, where there is moments where like the drums are following the guitars. But it feels like they're almost separated in this, where it's like the riff is sporadic and it's absolutely all over the place and it's chaotic like Vildhjarta, but it's groovy, you know? The drums are allowing that groove, whereas when the drums are just strictly following the incoherent nature of the riffs, like if the drums are to try and follow the pattern of the guitars in this, almost squeak there, we'll let it pass, I think it would just be a completely different story. Now maybe that's, you know, because I've thought about this, I'm like trying to figure out like why it is that certain songs absolutely slap, and maybe that's closer to the answer for why it is that I'm not massively into their new stuff, is maybe for that kind of a reason. Like you can hear the drums there, whatever the fucking drum pattern is, and then the riffs are like, it's just the way the whole thing builds. That is a good example. There's obviously songs on this that are a little bit less in my ballpark, but I think even the atmosphere and the vibe just clicked with me a little bit more on this. And again, it's also just because this, when I heard this album for the first time, it was such a unique experience. It was so fucking different. And, you know, it's also an hour and 20 minutes. I don't really want to listen to this album in its full again. It's too much. 17 tracks is fucking mental. But, yeah, that's pretty much it, lads. I don't really have much else to add. Don't really know where I stand with this new album. I think it's solid. I think it's better than what I anticipated it to be, but it's also not really something that I'm listening to and saying, oh, do you know what, they've kind of pulled me back in. I kind of maybe just didn't really understand the singles. There's definitely some merit in that, where I didn't fully understand the singles without the context of the album, but I don't think the album context does that much to bring them to life either. I still think they're a little bit all over the place. But I think there is just also elements of their music that I really loved, and the parts of the last album, you know, the Staten Under Vatten album, that are kind of just not really in this album. Obviously the atmosphere is a little bit different. I think there's a less consistent atmosphere in this. The atmosphere, if we just look at the actual atmosphere and the world building in this album, it doesn't feel as strong as it did in the last two albums. There's like less of like kind of like a haunted, weird forest vibe in this. It's I don't even really know what the feeling of this album is, you know? I don't actually have that visual imagery in my head. So that's kind of tricky as well. And then also there's just an omission of a lot of those fun, groovy riffs that we had in the last album as well, and the previous album. So yeah, they're my thoughts, lads. Let me know what you think, or just spot on my screen. Brilliant. Let me know what you think. I don't really know where I sit with this album in terms of a rating. I don't normally do ratings, and I don't think I'm going to start now because I don't know where I would actually put this. It's a hard album to rate in one listen. I think people will agree with me on that one. I think I'll be allowed or afforded the luxury of not having to have that pressure of rating it right now, which is why I don't tend to rate the albums anymore on a first listen because it's kind of a pointless exercise. It's like right now, this is where it lands, but like if I listen to it tomorrow or in a different atmosphere, it could be, you know, much better ratings wise or much less. So it's kind of just a pointless exercise. So this is my thoughts right now. That could obviously change. I still think like production wise, the drum mix and everything was fantastic. The vocals were not bad. I've never been a big Vildhjarta vocal guy. I mean, I think they're good and they serve the purpose, but Vildhjarta to me is about the vibe, instrumentally, production, the atmosphere. That's always been what I've enjoyed them for. So the vocals are kind of just there for me. I don't think the vocalist is in any way, shape or form bad. I just think he's just a part of it. I don't really think about it too much. I don't really attach too much thought to the vocals in this because of how chaotic the instrumentals are. It's kind of hard to really even properly pay attention to what's going on vocally, especially when I don't understand the language as well. That's a big part of it, I think. That's also a massive, you know, relevant factor, is that I don't actually know what he's talking about, so I don't have any like emotional connection to it. So my emotional connection comes very much so from the feel of the overall music. That's a whole different conversation which we could talk about. Like Calandra, for example. I just seen Calandra live. A lot of the songs I have no idea what they're talking about because it's in Norwegian, and I'm happy with that because the music speaks to me on such a level that it goes beyond language. So that's what I felt with Staden and Vatten, is that it kind of spoke to me without me understanding anything. So this one didn't have that same impact. But that's all. Leave a like in the video if you enjoyed, lads. Make sure you're subbed. That was almost 2 hours of yapping, so my brain's a bit scrambled, as you can imagine. So I'm going to sign out. Thanks so much for watching. Leave a like, subscribe. If you're watching on Patreon, love you so much. I appreciate your support. If you're not watching on Patreon, any support on Patreon, we much appreciate. The links are in the description. Love yous. See you soon. Cheers.